Welcome home. It's two words that, as veterans, we yearn to hear from the day we leave until the day we put down our heads, and it's the reason why we have a podcast. Here we are on episode 19 of the Welcome Home podcast, where we talk about the transformation from troops and boots to veterans in the civilian world. Today, I got my good buddy Donnie on the podcast. I've had the pleasure of knowing Donnie here briefly, although I've known him through the interwebs and the LinkedIns for, it feels like, years. Donnie wrote a book. I wrote a book. We're going to probably talk about what it's like to be a veteran that writes a book and owns a business. Donnie, take it away.
Hey, brother, good to fucking hang out with you, man.
Yeah.
I admit it was fun jumping on a Zoom with you the other day because, like you said, I've seen you all over LinkedIn for quite a while. You don't know this, but you actually gave a speech somewhere and you taught the room how to do this LinkedIn freaking trick of how to get connected with everybody in the room.
Oh, yeah,
This
yeah,
was
yeah.
like 2 years ago. They don't even have the feature anymore.
No, yeah. So I started doing that about 4 years ago. And actually, what it came down to was I was talking about Young Guns. This is where I was doing that bit for a while there. And I'm like, hey, here's the problem with a lot of networking. People go out and network and they don't know why they do it. And they leave and they're like, well, that was 90 minutes of my life I'm not going to get back. And I did my 30-second BS. And so we created a new networking group called Young Guns, similar to what you're doing. And we're going to talk about your event coming up in October, because I love what you guys are doing, right? And anyways, with Young Guns, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. I'm going to teach you what to do. I'm like, everyone take out your phone. And I taught them, which was really simple. I loved the feature that LinkedIn had, which was everyone in a geographic area, typically a room, puts on their Find Me, right? And it's, just proximity locator. And then everyone can add everybody. And it was great because when you're in a networking event, when you spent 5 minutes, I did this with the chamber, this was pre-COVID. I'm like, hey, spend 5 minutes, everybody, open up LinkedIn, connect with everybody else. Cool. Now let's not talk about business cards the next 90 minutes. Everyone's connected with everybody on LinkedIn. Shoot them a message. That's the forum where business people talk and interact and get to know each other beyond the once a month you see them in a networking event.
Dude, you made me look like a genius because I stole that damn idea.
100%.
And was teaching everybody else. I'm like, you guys got to try this shit, right?
Well, that's you know what? In order to be an expert, you have to know one thing that no one else in the room does, and that's it. That, and again, that cuts it. There's the old adage, right? When you steal from one person, it's called plagiarism. When you steal from everybody, it's called research.
And so, and what is the other one? You say it once, you give them credit. You say them twice, you give it credit. But the third or fourth time, just own that shit.
You own it. Okay, so let's talk about this. You wrote a book. How long would you write your book? It's called From Fuck to Focused.
Yep.
Catchy title. When did you write that book?
So that came out last year, around May of last year. That one came out.
Okay, so a little longer than a year runway. So this is one thing I heard, and so I don't know where this episode is going to go. Maybe it's being veteran, influential people writing books and sharing knowledge. I don't know. Maybe that's the title. I'm sure in the next 50, 60 minutes we can come up with a better title. Anyhow, so in your...
because ChatGPT that shit.
I did an episode of ChatGPT on my other podcast, in the Trash Talk Business Podcast. Scared the shit out of me that the lack of comprehensive thinking that someone has to do to just copy and paste everything ChatGPT says. Like, there's no critical thinking anymore. It's like, oh, that sounds about right. And it's like, well, hold on. Let's make sure. It was bad enough we had fact checkers on Facebook for a while there. Now we're not even fact checking. Now we're telling them to make, telling the algorithms make up the narrative. And the people that created AI openly admit that they don't know how it works. They're like, well, we told it to do something and now it's doing stuff. All right, let's go back to the book. 37 rabbit holes we'll get on today. Let's at least finish one thought. All right, so when you wrote your book, right, did you quote people, cite people, take knowledge from other places? Is that fair to say?
I didn't quote people, but I 100% learned knowledge from other areas, from other people.
Okay, and did you cite, are there any citations or references within your book?
No.
Okay, so my book is heavily referenced and cited. And one thing someone recently told me was, once, kind of what you said there, it's like, stop giving credit to everybody else when you come up with an original idea. And I've struggled with that. I love getting credit to other people. Like, hey, I learned this thing when I went to Donnie's thing. Because to me, when people come up to me like, hey, I read in the book this thing, it makes them sound more credible and knowledgeable that they read something and now they're applying it, versus just coming off the top of their head with it. So for me, I think there's a level of credibility when you give credence and acknowledgement to other people.
I agree with you, but there's a caveat.
Please.
I don't think that anybody's creating anything new, right? I think we're all kind of regurgitating shit out there. I'm 100% of that. I do think we figure out unique ways to make things work for us. Like right now, I've got this killer LinkedIn strategy that I don't think anybody else is doing. They're at least not talking about it on social media. We're getting a 15-to-1 ratio, hit 15 reach outs, leads 1 new client. And I'm 100% teaching this, but I learned this, and I'm sure I saw videos and things from other people. I couldn't tell you who, but we adapted the whole process for our business and our style of business. Since I fucked it up to figure it all out, that's mine. That's original to me, right? I can't tell you who taught it, right? So for me, that's original thought that I'm going to put out. There's nobody to credit. The way I wrote my book was my journey of how I built my company, right? So I fucked a lot of things up, building the business. And so it's partially telling my story of how I got to here and teaching the fundamentals I needed to learn. I guarantee you everything I wrote in that book, I heard from somebody else, and it's just been the years of banging my head up against a wall, figuring out how to build a business, regurgitated my own vernacular. The things that I love to really credit people on is there's like some powerful quotes that have been impactful in my journey, like Jim Rohn's, the 5 people you surround yourself with, and those type of things I think are powerhouse maneuvers. I don't think I retain enough to give enough people credit, in that same vein.
Okay. So that's where it's a little bit different often. And this might be my next book. There's 2 working titles for my next book. It's either Numbers Fucking Matter, because my first book is called Words Fucking Matter. And I also love numbers, and it might be a book on the importance of KPIs within your business, that's really a working weird. I think it's interesting. If I wrote a book called Words Fucking Matter and then Numbers Fucking Matter, like what's this guy? Like, what matters next? And the other one I'm thinking about, I should say thinking, right? It's in my books, don't say thinking. The other ones I'm actively writing right now is Phrases to Win the Day. And it's a pretty soft title, I'll admit, and it's a working title. And what it is it's literally the phrases I say, the origin of where I heard them from, and how I apply them to daily life. Because I have that really good recall. Like I often will say something to the effect of people's opinions of me are none of my business, per Les Brown. Right? Because that's the person I heard it from, right? Les Brown said, right? People's opinions of you are none of your business. And it's like, okay. And I'm even paraphrasing what he says, and yet I'm going to give credit exactly to him in that moment. And then there's also things I say, like from the movie Tommy Boy or Big Lebowski, or, like little things like that, where it's like, I know exactly what cultural, pop cultural reference that came from. And it's funny how I apply a random line into everyday life.
Well, I don't know if you're like me on that point, man. I will watch a movie or listen to a podcast, and man, I will get a freaking aha or something. I'm like, shit, I can apply that right to the company, or life in general. So I keep a little, I keep Asana on my phone, the little section on there calling walking thoughts, because I do this most when I'm listening to my podcast and doing my morning walks. And these are the little ahas, and it's just filled with these little one-liners that I pick up from different places. It's not usually the words that the person actually said. It's my interpretation of what they said.
The applicability or the applicability to you, whether you repeat those words or you take that and run with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
No, and that's so what you do is exactly what I do. I have a running tally, and when I have this random nugget that I hear, or even when it's random people, like 2 weeks ago, a week ago maybe, I was with my dad and we were working on my house, and it was like 5:30, and I'd been there since 9. And I was done. And my dad's a carpenter by trade. He's 67 years old, and he's like, "Well, sun's still shining," and I'm like, I know what that means. It means we're going till 8:30 when the sun goes down, right? It's like I'm 39 and my back hurts, and he's 67. Like, oh, I guess we're about halfway through the day. But anyways, what he said was, he goes, "What we get done today, we don't have to do tomorrow." And I looked at him. I'm 39 years old. I've never heard him say that, and I worked with him for years. And I go, huh? He goes, Kate McDonald taught me that, and Kate McDonald was this very successful VP. That he worked for a number of years. And it's like he just in that moment knew exactly what to say and how to say it. So it wasn't like my dad grew up on a farm. So it wasn't like his redneck hillbilly logic. It was this random, very simple, right? This project's not getting done any sooner. However, what we get done today, we're not doing tomorrow. And it was so in that moment I needed it. And for the next like 2 hours, we were putting trim in at my house. The next 2 hours, we didn't talk to each other, and we were putting in trim. And it's a 2-man operation. We've done it so many times. We started cranking. We got more done in those 2 hours than we did in the first 8 hours of the day, because he said it and he meant it. And it was like, okay. And what it was I could see the pile of trim, and I know how my dad works. We were going until we ran out of trim or we ran out of walls. That was the line. And he didn't have to say it. I could just see it. And I'm like, if he's going to pick up his pace, I'm picking up mine. And all of a sudden we got, because earlier in the day we were with putsy stuff. We were in the registers, and we were, we had to repaint a couple spots, a little bit of mud. And once we got doing the trim, it was production work. And we had like 4 or 5 people there earlier in the day, because the neighbors stopped by and people were kind of helping. It's almost like more hands make it slower, because then the carpenter can't carpenter. Right. Yep. And I'll tell you, I'm a hell of a number 2 carpenter. I can cut and run boards like you wouldn't believe. You put me on a project all by myself, I second guess everything and putts. Right. Because working for my dad, it was 4 or 5 years of working for him. I never would have said, yeah, I'm a full-fledged carpenter. No, I was a carpenter's apprentice at best. I can do demo, I can hang drywall. Everything else, I'm kind of the guy handing the tools to the guy that does the thing, Right. Once we got cranking, though, it went. And so for my dad to reference somebody and to me to reference my father, like that's that level of retention. My father was one of those people who used to cut things on the newspaper. I remember this was probably 5 years ago, 5 years ago. I was doing one of my first real big boy speeches. Like there was an audience and I had a teleprompter, and it was basically 10 ideas. So it was 90 ideas in 90 minutes. And so there was 9 of us, naturally, math, and we all had 10 ideas. And as I'm about to get up on stage, he hands me a clipping, and it was Queen Elizabeth, maybe. And it was so there's a phrase, something to the effect of do what you're going to do. They're going to judge you anyways. So it was like, hey, if you're going to when you get up there, you got something to say it. And so I got up and my opening line was, I know we got these PowerPoints. I got 10 minutes. I got a lot to cover. But let me tell you something. If you want to know how rehearsed I am, my father gave me this. I'm about to read it, and we're going to see if it applies, more or less. Right? And I said, okay, that's that. Like, you want to know an idea? This is how we're going to kick things off, right? When you put up, when you go do a speech, you are doing a disservice to the audience if you don't know everything you're speaking on 10 times deeper than what you're speaking on. If you got to look back at the slides to see where you're at, you don't have a depth of knowledge worthy of that stage, because those people expect you to know this shit. They expect you to know it and breathe it and sleep it, not look back and read off PowerPoint, which
100%. Two thoughts popped in my head as you were going through that. One is my COO, Kevin Snow. Him and I were on his podcast, and we were battling out with this the podcaster, the host of the show, because he thought that I was saying, you got to do the hustle lifestyle and this, that. And Kevin finally looked at the host and goes, look, let me break it down for you this way. I grew up on a farm, 4,500 acres of land, 1,500 head of cattle, right? We don't get a day off on the farm. It's not that we're working ourselves to the bone. We don't get a day off. We don't get a choice. The cows can't let themselves out of the barn. The cows can't put themselves up at night. The cows can't feed themselves. So we have to do that. So it's not about the hustle lifestyle. That's not what Donnie's saying. Donnie's saying you do the damn work until the damn work's done. And that phrase has been like our battle cry, for the company as a whole, is you do the work until the work's done. And then we'll call it a day. It's not about the hustle. It's not about breaking your dick in the ground, right? Nope. It's about doing what you need to do and keep doing it. And literally that phrase is used through the entire company right now. And everybody kind of uses that as their motto of, do the work. The second point is on speaking on stages, man. I'm 100% agree with you, dude. I would rather be pointed to in a crowd, say, Donnie, come up and teach the room something, and let me just freaking go. Versus somebody saying, hey, can you put together this organized particular speech on X, Y, and Z? The only time I think a PowerPoint is proper is if you do like we do as a 3-day summit and you're pointing people in the fucking directions they need to go next. Or if there's like specific announcements you need to make, right? You need to be able to put that information out there. Otherwise, a PowerPoint is for you, not them.
Yeah. No, I agree. The challenge I have is, or the opportunity I should say, is I love getting on stage and speaking from the heart and not having that that weight, if you will, right? Or it's a ball and chain that's pulling you back. It's kind of like I hate going on stage with a podium because it's this default. It's this default fighting position you go and hide behind, and it's like no, you gotta work the whole stage. I remember I did a TEDx a number of years ago, and the circle is only 7 feet in diameter. And what they say is like you have to stay in the circle. You can't leave the circle because their whole idea is to have focused thought. And with that, you could not have a PowerPoint. And what was interesting there is I used the whole circle, right? If I got 7 feet diameter, I'm going to work whatever, pi, I got 21 some odd, what do you call it? Squared feet to work with. I'm going to use every bit of that circle to articulate my point. And I won't go outside the circle. I will use the whole circle, kind of like using a stage. And that's where using your voice and your enunciation and your depth of knowledge beats the hell out of a PowerPoint. When I have had PowerPoints like this last one, and I've struggled. When I do a 45-minute or 90-minute talk, which I've done, I almost always have a PowerPoint to keep me moving. And so the audience knows that, oh, we're going into the next thing. In my last PowerPoint, I had like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Like, oh, hey, we're shifting gears. And that's all. All it said was like sales.
Yeah.
Marketing, right? Like one word. Hey, this is what we're talking about, right? If you're wondering what I'm talking about, we're talking about marketing. And because I spoke about marketing in a way that most marketers didn't speak about it. So it's like, oh shit. Oh, I'm following along. Because to your point, when you have that PowerPoint as a crutch, they're not listening. They're watching, they're reading, they're distracted, right? And then there's that, do they really know what they're talking about up on stage?
Dude, I was at this huge sales conference with Sessler training. I was actually a Sessler trainer for a number of years. And so we got all the franchisees up in Baltimore. So you got all the big freaking egos in the room. To be a sales trainer at that level, you got to freaking have your crap together most times, right? So, but it's all a bunch of huge egos. And this guy's up there and he's talking about how you speak professionally on stage. And this dude, he was like, here's their spot. You stay right here. You stand in your power. You don't move around the stage. And in the middle of his speech, I started laughing because I thought it was the dumbest thing I ever heard, that you're supposed to stand in one spot on stage.
Stiff.
Of course, now, but yeah, it's stiff. It's like everybody's sitting there looking at me, and he paused and goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, if you don't use that entire, now this is his presentation, man. I'm not supposed to be interrupting. I'm like, if you don't use that entire stage, then you're missing out on 90% of your audience. You're talking to this real tiny section of the segment right here. I'm like, get to the people. Hell, if I can walk into the crowd, I'd walk into the crowd.
Well, that's the difference between, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, who stands still, right? And let me tell you who does. Dang old politicians.
Yes,
they love that podium. Now
they when they're asked a tough question, watch them. They sip their water because they're taught to sip their water. To
sip their water. Yep. 2 seconds to think of the pre-rehearsed answer that was pre-approved by the powers that be. We'll leave that alone. I'm still in the Army Reserve, so
I don't like talking politics, but
I know that's what I'm saying. 19 minutes in the podcast, we started going down that road. God bless. But here's the deal. Now let's look at the stage. Who uses the whole stage? Rock stars use the whole damn stage. Right. A good preacher or a good pastor uses the whole stage. A good preacher gets out behind the pulpit, right, to do the sermon, and he gets with the people. He'll use the whole altar. He'll go up and down the aisle. He'll look at people, interact with them. He'll challenge them. The one that's right wants to, because now it's a conversation versus you're talking with people versus talking at people. And that's a significant difference.
I'm trying to look up his name really quick. There is freaking black Southern preacher that he's a
hold on. First of all, we already knew he was black and Southern, right? That ship sailed. As soon as I said that, we all envisioned the same guy working. All right, you look it up. I'll tell jokes. So there you go.
because he's freaking amazing, and
it's mesmerizing.
And his ability to freaking grab a crowd, and he'd be sweating his face off, but he's so much passion into it. I'm sitting there, and I'm not a religious dude. I don't get into that stuff at all, but I can sit and llisten to that dude talk for hours because he's so freaking good.
I was raised Roman Catholic, and all growing up in school, we church 3 times a week, whatever it was, and it was twice and then 3 times towards junior high, whatever it was.
T.D. Jakes. Sorry.
T.D. Jakes?
Yeah. He's
T.D.
awesome.
Jakes.
Bishop T.D. Jakes.
T.G. or Kitty? What are we saying?
T.D. Bishop T.D. Jakes. He's has a 30,000 member church in Dallas.
Yeah, Big D. Big D.
Yep.
Oh, All right, I know. Yep, I have seen this cat. Yep, white
Yeah,
beard.
dude, and
Oh
he
yeah,
just fucking gets after it. It's awesome.
Um, no, it reminds me. So, raised Catholic, right? Catholicism pretty much stand up, sit down, kneel. However,
Yes.
we had a priest. We had this priest who I remember he was known for going to. We knew him in school because he was our head pastor, Father Tony. And what I remember on him is he was missing 3 fingers. He got them cut off in a lawnmower. And so, like, when you're a kid, you see someone like missing 3 fingers or they're cut off in little stubs. You're like, that's kind of cool. And then the other thing was he was known to do ministry at prisons. Like that was his. Like that was I don't know. Most priests have like this their shtick, right? And that was his shtick. So I'm like, and on top of it, he drove a Harley. So I'm like, okay. He would get up there and do a sermon, and you're like, okay, I can get behind this. I get it. Like he tied the gospel into the sermon and into real life. Like I that's good. And then when he wasn't the priest, it was this guy that just went up there and like it's like he had talking points. He had a right, and that's one thing. I'm not a religious person. When people tell me they are religion, I'm always like someone like congratulatory towards them. I'm like that's awesome because it's something. I don't care where you get some level of education, inspiration, understanding from. It's better to have something than nothing. Now,
agreed.
I love the University of YouTube. I'm a huge fan of the right code name Goldcast. Right, that's what I mean. That's where I get my rocks off. There's about a dozen commencement speeches that I can watch at any given moment and get something out of, even though I've heard it
Patrick,
50 times.
Dinklage, Peter Dinklage is one of the best commencement speeches.
Phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal. He said, "I'm done. I'm not stopping until I am a full-time paid actor.
Yep,
that's it. No more bullshit jobs." Right? It's like, okay.
And then where he gets me in that speech, man, he's like, fail again, fail
keep
better,
failing.
And I'm like,
yeah. Yes. Well, and it's no different. So you have a Marine Corps background. It's no different than the Army. When you see a fresh lieutenant or a captain that a little wet behind the ears yet, and they get in front of formation, they don't get off that. They kind of bury their feet in that grass and they never move.
Yep.
You get a good NCO that's been a platoon sergeant for a minute and a first sergeant for even longer. Man, they work that crowd.
Yep.
They go up from headquarters all the way down on the 3rd platoon. They know what's going on, right? And he's moving, he's shaking, he's motivating because you got to lead and you got to inspire. Man, you put a officer up there more often than not, they stiff as a board. I remember when I was a platoon sergeant, I first became a platoon sergeant. I'd be up there stiff as a board, and then I'm like, no, I just work the crowd, right? Give people a reason to listen to you. Now you're regurgitating the same shit that the first sergeant only said a minute ago, and the same shit that your squad leader is about to tell you. You're just saying it one more own time with your own flavor. So I had the opportunity to learn to find my voice because the it's like content versus the delivery. I could focus on the delivery because the content was I'm only repeating what the first sergeant said in some capacity,
right.
And then I learned how to be on stage and be content with my delivery. I hate the word comfortable because you're not comfortable. And that's the beautiful thing about it. Like you said, you'd rather get up on stage anytime and talk. That's the good stuff. And that's the stuff we're taught in the military. They'll put you on the spot and expect you to hip-hop training and teach something in front of your group of your peers.
Dude, I would add into there that I'll speak for my truth, man. I think it's my duty to be able to present in such a manner that makes it okay for people to come up and talk to me, right? Because I think some speakers, because they're such trained speakers, right? That's what they do. Their entire world is around speaking, that they have this methodology and it makes them highly fucking unapproachable, So I know that there's people, they don't need to, but they'll look at anybody who gets on stage and they're almost in awe that somebody's up there able to do that, right? Yep. And I want that person to know it's okay to come up and say hi afterwards. Like I want them to come talk to me. I want them to approach me. And the only way you can get a lot of those people who are uncomfortable in those situations coming up and saying hi is you got to take the shit to them. Yep. And I find that if you can work the stage, you take the shit to them. If you can get in the crowd, which for me, I'm happy to freaking jump right in the middle of the crowd and talk and bring them in. It just makes you more approachable because, listen, nobody's sitting at any speech because they are forced to be there and excited about it. Most people are showing up because they're actually trying to learn something. There's something they need, some sort of knowledge. And you may have the one freaking, straw that broke the camel's back idea that allows them to make something finally click in their damn head. And, you want them to be able to walk up and say, hey, dude, I really appreciate that. This is my takeaway from it. And I'll tell anybody who does a workshop, if you ever do a workshop and you finish that workshop without asking for lessons learned and literally going around and letting people tell you their takeaways, you're missing out on one of the biggest opportunities to get people to learn what you just taught them. So
Yeah, you know what? You're already prepping the end of the show. So at the end of the show, I learned this from Chris Kalenda. So speaking about giving credit, Chris Kalenda was one of my mentors, Army Colonel, Strategic Leadership Academy, and he was my coach for a while. And every single coaching session, he goes, "All right, what are your top takeaways?" And every time, without fail, I would say, "All right, these are the three things." He's like, "All right," or 3 to 5 things, whatever. Right? A lot of times, people want to assign a number to them. What are the 3 things you learned today? It's like, well, no. What are your top takeaways? Sometimes it's one with an incredible level of depth, and sometimes it's like, oh, here are 10 things. Okay, well, what are you going to act on? Right?
Yep.
And so even at the end of this podcast, at the end of every one of my podcasts, I'm like, all right, what are your top takeaways? And often, what the other guests say are something that wasn't even on my radar, and that's important because 2 people can have a conversation, and you can leave with 2 different things. And so you better understand people when you understand what they understood, right? Seek first to understand before being understood. And when you take the time to ask, you will get that information. And so I always go into, when I'm going into people speaking, I'm almost like tallying the nuggets as they hit, and I write them down or I jot them down because I want to remember them further and I want to look into them further. Whatever your methodology is, because if you go there, to your point, and you sit there for 45 minutes, an hour, and you get nothing out of it, chances are it's you. It's not the speaker.
Yes.
Even shit speakers have something that's worth listening to. Even if it's the what not to do, is like that guy that was stiff as a board, sitting in one spot, telling you how to be a professional, selling the Sandler sales fucking bullshit. I have had that shit pitched to me, and it makes so much sense. I'm like, this is too simple, and there's no way you can. Well, there's no way I would pay for something that's so simple.
Yeah, Sandler is really good if you do not have a sales system. Like if you've never sold and you need a sales system, Sandler is perfect for that. Beyond that, if you're using the Sandler system long in your career, you've never actually been able to sell.
Correct. You're a process follower, person.
Yep.
You can say the right words at the right time.
Now, I will tell you one great thing David Sandler did give me, and it was on one of his tapes because he passed away before I went to work for Sandler. But he said that it never matters the words coming out of your mouth. It only matters what they hear and how they interpret it. And I went, oh, that is fucking potent, because what I think I'm saying may not be what they're learning. And so I had to be cognizant of, just because I said it this way doesn't mean they interpreted it the way I said it. And that came true later as I was doing a lot of training, and a guy came through and he went through Sandler with me a couple of times. And like the third time through, he walked up and goes, "Why do you teach this class different every time?" And I said, "Well, I don't. I think you're just hearing it differently." And he went, right. He goes, "I think you're right." I think I'm maturing, in the process. But the idea that the words we say is not what they hear is a pretty powerful moment for me.
That is something I started to touch on in my book, and something I've always struggled with. And it's so, whoever the person is you're talking with, it's for me at least, it's ideal to do some type of check-ins, right? Even when your employees, as simple as like, hey, repeat back what you heard, right? Yes. And that's very mechanical. And then sometimes with your friends or even significant other, it's kind of like, okay, what do you understand, or what, like, and again, it's that recall piece. And it's putting a process in place to ensure that there is no misinterpretation. There's plenty of times where I'm like, these are the words I said. How could you have interpreted it anything different than this? And it's like, and yet here we are, and that's the responsibility of the leader and the speaker to do those check-ins ultimately.
Yeah, because dude, I'm the worst at, hey, there's the hill, take that for me. And then my mind automatically assumes, okay, I told them what direction to go, what they accomplished. They got this. And then when they come back at a different result, and I had a buddy of mine pull me aside one time, I was reprimanding a guy. And after it was done, he pulled me aside and goes, "Hey, you can't get mad if somebody for doing something you didn't tell them was okay not to do, right?" He goes, "You're literally jumping this guy's ass for something you never gave him the parameters on. You didn't tell him what the out of bounds was. So that's on you, not him." And I went, fuck, he's right.
Left and right limits. 100%.
And when I started hiring people for my company, I had to stop doing the dump and run, which is, hey, here's your project, go make that happen. and then run away, let them, assuming they're the expert in it, they should know how to do it, not knowing that they can't read my freaking brain housing group and know exactly what needs to be done and how I want it accomplished. I had to learn to actually give people what's the parameters, what needs to be accomplished, how do I need you to accomplish it, stay within the lines, right? Otherwise, make it happen.
So what kind of what process did you put in place to make that happen?
So we have a funny system called ADD, and having ADHD, it really fits really well. It's take action, document, delegate. So what we do most times is we'll take action on a particular thing, because I think you can't develop a process good until you've gone through whatever you're trying to do. So let's take LinkedIn reach outs as a thing. Like, okay, let's go try LinkedIn. Let's go find the mechanics of it. So you take the action. Cool. As you're taking the action, document the process. What did you go through? Then you have to be able to give that process to somebody else. So at that point, it's still not a process. What has to happen then is the second person has to actually ADD it. They have to take action on the process. They have to document the journey. And before they give it to the person who's actually going to execute, they then have had to perfect the system.
So is person number 2 in this situation, are they doing the same? So person 1 does it. Person 2 runs the same performance steps and adds to it, and then person 2 has to perfect it, and then person 3 does it.
Correct. Person 3 is the one who finally gets the job. That's how we typically do it.
That's interesting.
And the reason being is person number 1 creating the process. I always am going to build it so it works for me. But that does not mean somebody else can follow the steps. So I then give it to somebody else who's in my implementer that's going to go in and put my theory to test. And once I put my theory to test, now it's the system's built that we can give it to somebody else.
So it's interesting. So one of the things that I talk about with the 6 buckets of business, which is a class I teach, is when it comes to the 6 buckets, you have your high 3, low 3. And part of your low 3 is understanding why is it a low 3. And it's either a skill gap or a will gap. So for example, I'm really good at answering the phones, right? That's a process within our business where it's like, I am highly skilled in it. However, my desire is very, very low.
Right.
So that is an ideal thing to delegate, because no, I can't think. Travis Johnson, Navy vet, he did. I was on his podcast, the Titans podcast, on his podcast a while back ago. And what he said, again, that we're referencing other people, is when it comes to things in your life that no longer serve you, you learn to delegate, automate, or eliminate. And so I've now taken that, and I've against the skill versus will gap, which is an interpretation of something I was taught by Chris. And what I've realized is the things that you need to eliminate are typically things the delegate doesn't work. So for example, marketing is something I can't delegate because I haven't perfected it. Right. So I can't perfect something and then delegate it and expect someone to do it. I have to eliminate it from my purview entirely and hire like Mr. Third party outside company, because it's not a strength of mine or anybody on my team.
Right.
Versus automation or delegation, where it's like, oh, I know how to do this and I can build a system that works. And that's the challenge I see often with business owners is, right, among the 6 buckets, it's like they want to do all things. They know what's an energy suck. They know what they're not great at, and they either avoid it or they do it haphazard. And it's like, well, why don't, if it's something you don't want to do because you've been doing it for 20 years, you just want to pay someone else to do it. To your point, action, document, delegate. Have a second person do it and have the third person run it. Right? It's like, what is it? Gene made a machine. How does that go? Gene made a machine. Joe made it go. Art made a fart and blew the whole machine apart. Right? It's like, right? Gene, Joe, Art, right? 3 different people. And then Art, so long as he doesn't shit his pants, right? You're good to hook. Right? Because he can run the machine.
Alex Hormozy, to take this one more level, said something on one of his podcasts, and I was like, fuck, he's right. So when you delegate, right, you get that thing that you're getting off your plate to allow you to go do anything else, and you're trying to give it to somebody, you're automating or whatever you're doing, you have to replace it with a higher level activity, not a same level activity.
For you, the leader. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, for you, the leader, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
If I'm giving away, I don't know, freaking, starting one of our groups as a process, I can't go start another group, right?
No.
I have to go work on something else that brings more value to the company as a whole. So if you look at it in dollars, if I'm giving away a $5 process, I have to replace it with a $10 or a $20 process, not another $5 process.
And that's that. So again, we're tapping all over things, lessons learned in business. So we call that start, stop, continue methodology of change, right? So you've decided, hey, I'm going to stop doing this task. So now either you have to continue doing a high level task or start a new high level task. So for example, if you're doing one podcast a week, right, and that's a high level business development function in your business, and you give away that 5-hour task, well, then continue doing podcasting and do more of them because it's already proven to work. Or start doing something new. And the challenge a lot of business owners have is, I don't have enough time. Okay, well, what should you stop doing? What is it you avoid doing for 3 or 4 hours a week, and then it takes you a half hour? Like, how fast could you train somebody else to do that thing? I guarantee if you, to your point, do this action, document, delegate, within 6 weeks, you're never going to fret those 3-4 hours, avoiding this certain task, because you're going to spend an hour a week training somebody to do what it takes you a half hour to do. And eventually it'll take them a half hour to do it. And now you get those 2 or 3, 4 hours of BS where you're kicking it down the road, right? And we're all guilty of it. As a business owner, I'm guilty. There are things that do not bring value to my business that I find myself doing and thinking about, and that don't move the needle. And so what is it I need to move the needle, and what do I need to eliminate? And that is a constant. Like someone asked me one time, how often do you stop and do start, stop, continue methodology of change? Every day. Every day when I look back at my day, it's like, okay, where was my energy sucked? I also look at I'll look back after a week and I'll look at my social media usage against my calendar. And when I see high social media usage throughout the day, I'm like, okay, what was I doing that day that I was avoiding or that was distracted by? I can tell you, like Mondays I do my podcast, man, I'm not on social media at all on Mondays. Why? Because I'm engaged. I'm doing this podcast. I got another podcast. I'm doing content creation. I'm doing book writing. I'm doing all the creative stuff that I enjoy doing. That high level stuff that really only me, Andy, the business owner, thought leader guy can do. It's all the high level visionary stuff. The days I find myself on social media are the days that I'm going to networking events that I don't necessarily want to go to, or running operations. If I'm running the phones, man, I'm sitting there and my phone is right there. And so I'm answering the phones and doing customer service stuff. And it's like, that's where my will is not there. I got the skill, my will is not there. And so I easily get the ADHD kicking in and distracted.
Dude, I tell you, I have to set traps for myself. And this is what has worked fantastic for me. So, I'll speak my truth. I won't put it on everybody. If I don't do my business development stuff first thing in the morning, then it's not going to get done, because the day is just going to get freaking derailed. So I have learned that when I'm done for the day, I leave LinkedIn open on my computer or my second screen, right? Because LinkedIn is my number one business development area. I do all my reach outs there, all the conversations, it's a lot of my high level networking. So what I will do is throughout the day, that LinkedIn, like right now, LinkedIn's wide open on my screen. And the reason it's wide open on my screen is I put in a certain search parameter. So I will click on the search bar. I will then pick up people. I'll click on second, third connections. I will type in talks about networking. I will click founder or CEO as a title, and it'll pull up about 700 contacts, right? And I then can, throughout the day, do a connection, add a note to it, and reach out to people all throughout the day. Because what will happen a lot of times, I have my working farm. We have goats, chickens, everything on the farm. So that takes up a lot of my morning getting going. So if I misstep on taking care of the farm, my business derailment's going to be done. So the trap I set is, if I want to take my wife out to dinner, I have got to do 20 reach outs a day, period. No discussion, has to get done. The only way I can do that is LinkedIn's right open. And dude, I'll be on podcast interviews and I'm over here typing in a connection. I will freaking be running a training, doing a connection, right? Because I can sit right here and get my freaking traps done. My wife's trained now that come Friday, she's like, how'd your reach outs go? And if I missed my number at all, I said, I'll see you in 45 minutes. And I will go sit down on the computer because I want to take her ass out to dinner. And it really forces me to stay in the routines.
And that's, there's a lot of science and research behind gamify. Humans are, inquisitive animals, and we want to get a prize. We want to win. We want to achieve. It's not carrot and horse. It's the dopamine that you figured something out. And that's why all these apps and even rewards programs at restaurants and stores. They figured it out years ago, right? Like we got, so Kohl's corporate headquarters is our backyard. Like it's like 5 minutes from our shop here. I grew up in Mount Falls where their corporate office is, and like, man, they have trained people that cold cash is worth its weight in gold. And it's like, no, they just marked everything up 100%. You're willing to spend twice as much because you got $50 worth of gift cards every time, or cold cash, right? And it's like, you got to use it by this day. So you built in this, oh, I got to use my cold cash. I got to get my points. I got to, like, even me, it's like, I will go to a gas station if I know I have a rewards card because I get 1 cup of coffee every other month. And it's like, oh, that's worth it for me, you know? And again, you got to build that in. I remember when I was writing my last paper for college, and it was basically, I was home like Saturday, Sunday. I had forced myself to write it. So basically, I told myself for every, it was like 2 pages of like written word, like done, like edited, not like, oh, just copy paste crap, right? For every 2 pages I wrote, which take me about an hour, I could watch 1 episode of Shark Tank. And I love Shark Tank, right? And so every hour, right, I basically had an hour of writing, hour of Shark Tank and a snack. Right? And then I got to a point where I started writing 3 or 4 pages at a time because I was already motivated. I got into a rhythm like, oh, 2 pages, that's nothing. I've been cranking those, right? It took me 2 hours, then it got down to half hour. And I was like, oh, I can go. And then it was, oh, let me do a whole hour of writing. Let's see how far I can get. And then the writing became the game. How far can I get? How many more things can I get done? And that's the goal, right? And that's no different than leadership with people. It's learning how to gamify the habits and behaviors, right? It's like, from some people, it's like, oh, I get a cheeseburger when I work out. Well, why isn't the workout the thing that motivates you?
See, that's for me, that's the toughest thing to learn, right? Because the activity itself should be
the motivator,
right?
Yes.
And I can tell you, doing these reach outs on LinkedIn, the actually doing the reach out should be the reward for me. It never is. The reward is, for me, it's the response. I don't even care if we win a client. It's somebody coming back saying, hey, appreciate it, not interested. Or somebody saying, yeah, let's talk further. For me, that's a win. And now I know the win should ultimately be freaking, we brought on a new client, blah, 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 blah. Right. But the
math is going to check out though, right? Let's do the hillbilly math, right? If you do, so you're doing 20 reaches out a day. So it's 100 a week.
15-to-1 ratio. Every 15 reach outs leads to 1 new client right now.
That's the bottom of the funnel is a 15-to-1 ratio. So you're getting 6.5 new clients a week.
Correct. Right.
That's what math says, right? So you'll lose. So like what? 1/3 respond to you, right? Or whatever. What's the math? 1/2 respond to you, right?
So yeah,
there's certain metrics along the way, right? You lose people like along the way.
Yeah, almost like 54. So it's like
percent.
1 out of 3, 1 out of we're losing them on the initial reach out. No response,
Correct.
No reply.
Okay, yeah. And so we're doing a math exercise, and this is the challenge because people will get into a bad streak, right? They'll be like, I made 50 reach outs and it didn't work. It's like, well, if it works 1 in 15 times, math says with your next 50, you're still going to get your 6.5.
Yep.
Because that's what the math says, and you've proven
it. May not be the first portion of it. It may not be the middle. It might be the last, right?
I tell people, so I do, junk removal is ultimately my discipline and how I made my money. And people call me like, oh, I've done like, last like 2 months I've been doing junk removal. All right, how many jobs you done? Like 15. I love it. I'm like, cool. Call me after 100.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to have 3 or 4 shit jobs out of 100. You might get to 95 jobs and 3 of your last 5 suck.
Yep.
Right? Or it's 1 in 20. Right? And it spreads out over time. And you don't know until you do 100. And then when people do 100 jobs, I'm like, cool. Did you document everything? Good, which I love that word. And then I'm like, all right, do 1,000 jobs and tell me what the trends are. Because the first 100 is, do you even enjoy doing it? And you don't know nothing yet. That is just a tactical, can you figure out how to get the thing out of the house and find a home for it that's not the landfill and maybe make a few bucks along the way? Because if you can't get to 100 jobs, don't go buy that new truck. Don't buy a new trailer. Don't quit your job. Whatever those things are.
Dude, I tell people all the time, because I get a lot of small business owners coming to me and they're like, I just need to hire a sales guy because I don't know how to figure this shit out. And it's not that you don't know how to figure it out. You just won't do the work.
Right. It's a will gap, not a skill gap.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. So I tell them, I said, there's a real simple way to figure out sales. And they're like, okay, what is it? I said, 1,000.
Yep.
Do 1,000 sales calls with 1,000 people that can tell you yes or no. And I promise you, after 1,000 sit downs across from somebody who can legitimately tell you yes or no, you're going to figure out how to sell. You're going to figure out how to process, and you're going to learn how there's nothing anybody can say that you don't already know which direction the conversation's going. It's really that simple.
And after 1,000 sales calls, you know what your batting average is going to be.
Yep.
You also know what you need it to be. And so when they fall off, you're ready and excited for the next one, because the next one might be the yes versus feeling encouraged by the no right now, right? Because it's a not right now. It's not a forever no. So let's talk about your business and what you do now. You were Sandler coach. You were Marine before that. I don't like to get into whatever. We'll either get into the history in the background or we won't. Like those are high level things for our listeners of the show. So what do you do now, and what value are you creating for veterans and non-veterans alike?
So, well, just to give them a little bit of background, after the Marine Corps, 20 years straight commission sales. So just to know, they know where I'm coming from. But I had no intention or desire to have these peer groups be a part of my company. I really thought I was going to be a sales trainer, and that's what the company I was going to build. And that was my background. But my first year out of business, I freaking was under a non-compete and couldn't talk about sales at all. So Sandler had me under a non-compete, and it sucked. So it took me a while, but long story short, we ended up creating these peer groups out of necessity and need of helping other people. So at the time when the pandemic hit, I had two online business. I had a sales training company going, and I had a podcast production company going. The podcast production company was focused on the corporate, Fortune 500s, and we were doing an internal podcast. So it was awesome. So we were helping them talk to their staff and employees. But when the pandemic hit, we watched the whole world being moved online, and knew it took me 2.5 years to build a legitimate online business. And I knew people didn't have 2.5 years to figure this out. So prior to launching my companies, I ran 11 networking groups for the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, and had 6 of my own networking groups going before I launched my company. Kevin, who's the co-founder of all this, he ran 52 BNI chapters with 4,000 members in it up in Minnesota.
Wow.
Right. Both of us were pretty much burned out on the whole idea of networking and did not want to do it. But when that pandemic hit, we both kind of felt like Liam Neeson. We're like, shit, we got a skill set. We know how to use it. We don't need these groups to be, profitable for us early on, but we have a means of helping other people. So we launched Success Champion, originally networking, back in March of 20. We've since evolved it to the peer groups, dropped the name networking off the back end, but we bring small service-based business owners together and use them as a group of individuals to help them grow their business. So we're not networking groups. People think we are. We're not. So I don't give a shit about referrals. Referrals should come from your clients, not your network. If you're trying to get referrals from your networks because you're broke and you fucking need them, right? If you're hanging out with a bunch of people that all they talk about is referrals, you're hanging out with a bunch of broke ass people, right?
Yep.
Change your rooms. So we're huge on introductions. If I can get you to the right person, cool. Now some collaborations and shit are going to happen. But we're 100% focused on business growth. So we just bring business owners together and give them the opportunity to level up together.
Sure, these roundtable groups essentially.
So so there's some similarity to traditional networking. So we have 1 seat per category, but they're primarily service-based business owners in a B2B setting, and just because the housing market is so damn volatile. So we don't do a whole lot that touch a home. Though we run 5 different meeting styles. So there's a mastermind, a round table, there's virtual coffee, introduction meetings. We have 18 people that go around the North America and teach and train on different topics. We have masterminds, hot seats, and a ton of other training. But the whole goal is to come each week and work on your business. Now, working on that business may be figuring out ways to collaborate with other individuals. It may be getting introductions and doors opened. It may be learning right along some people. Hell, there's opportunities for you to say, hey, guys, I'm fucking this up in business, almost like a mastermind. Anybody have any ideas on how we fix a solution? And it just happens to me.
Are these groups, are they meeting in person, online?
Nope,
How virtual. Are these groups meeting? All virtual.
Yeah, and the reason we did a virtual is I run a farm, and I'm 35 minutes from town. If I got to run into town for anything, dude, I lose half a damn day. So, and if there's an emergency on the farm, I'm here. So,
and with that though, are they Do you put people that are in the same market area at least, or are they all over the country?
Nah, we put them in the same market area. So we'll
Okay,
put a pin
that makes
drop in a
sense.
major city, draw a circle at a 1 hour around it, because licensing a lot of times keep people trapped, or like franchising location keeps people trapped in certain areas, right? So we respect the local, but so two things we do. One, we highly encourage a monthly happy hour breakfast get together, because there's something about a handshake and a hug. Two, anybody in our groups has access to every group we have. So if you're a member of one, you can go to all the other ones. And it's free, easy access in there to go network. You just don't know who knows who where.
No, I love that. So I did BNI prior to the pandemic. The president of our company continues. He does a virtual BNI, which is interesting. And I am in a CEO roundtable that I've been in for a number of years, and it is the value I get from that is insane. I was in a couple. I was part of a franchise in the past, and I was in a couple of like franchise roundtables with people in different business sectors, and that was interesting to hear their perspective. Because as a franchise owner, you hear the propaganda from the franchisor, and you hear the other franchisees bitch. It's like we're all bitching about the same thing. So that was a good one because I got with other business owners. I'm like, well, hold on. What are some things about franchises I need to be made aware of, or business, or this market, or yada? And you're right. We never asked for referrals. It was a natural function, and even now within my CEO roundtable, we do business together and we refer each other because we know each other, right? It's that whole, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And it's like, well, people know me and they trust me and they might like me. And so that's all I need, right? Versus changing it. Also, one thing you said that was interesting to me was in the past we referred to when we documented our where we get our leads from, we always would document referral from our networking groups or not from our like realtors or senior living. And in the last year, we changed it to networking because a referral is something that when you provide great customer services, you get referrals. Networking, you have to be active. You have to be in front of these people. Well, they could introduce you to 20 people and they'll forget about you if you haven't seen them in a while. That's
but let's define the human condition. What referral is, right? So what I think most people are actually doing is they're giving introductions, not referrals.
Yeah, they are.
Right. An introduction is two. Yeah, you're right. Introduction is two good people go meet, right? Which there's a ton of power in putting the right people together. Like if I know exactly, my favorite question to ask people is, what industry sends you the most referrals? Right. Because odds are I know a ton of people in that industry. So if you tell me that, I'm like, cool, stand by. Let me open up some doors. And I'm going to start making introductions right now. Right. There's no weight to it. It's just, hey, two good people, go meet, go have a great conversation. I can make introductions. And unless you're an asshole, I'll make introductions all day long. Right. Flip it. A referral has a sales conversation attached to it.
Transaction.
Right? Yep. Right. People are expecting to be sold to. So it's Bob meets Sally. Sally, Bob's looking for your services. He's really excited to sit down and talk to you. There's a sales transaction on that. Most people give introductions. They're not wrong, but if you're going to give a referral, now you're attaching your personal brand to that referral. You're actually mafia style vouching that, hey, Andy's
we'll take care of him.
Yep. So we know that if you're in a room full of people and all they're doing is talking about referrals, I got to get referrals. Did you get your referrals? Did you give referrals? That's a bunch of broke people. And it's because they don't know how to get business anywhere else. So they have to come here in hopes that somebody else will grow their business.
Well, and it's also the transactional now relationship versus the transformational long term, right? When the people I've known, so I've been in this full time now 7 years. I've known people for 7 years that I've never exchanged goods and services with that I would introduce to anybody in my network, and vice versa, whether they ask me to or not. And often they don't ask for an introduction because they know they'll get theirs by being a good, business owner.
Well, I want to speak to that too, because here's a fundamental shift people have to make when building their business. The idea of give to game fucking kills me. I hate the entire phraseology. I hate the saying. The idea has to be give, take, give again. Because if you never take, then you're just going to get walked on, taken advantage of. It drives me bonkers. And people are like, I give all these introductions, I give all these referrals, and nothing ever comes back to me because you're not fucking taking. Right? tell people who you need to be introduced to. And otherwise you're just going to say, networking doesn't work.
Well, it's about it's in intentionality, and the best thing you can do is know, like you said, hey, what is the industry? Who in the industry? What are you looking for? When you can paint a very clear picture. So for me, junk removal, right? You say, as soon as you said it, I'm like, yep, realtors, residential, commercial, residential. What brands, right? Because there's different. I can tell you the top 3 brands I want an introduction to, like that. That's who I do my best work with in our area. So it's Keller Williams, which is national. It's First Weber, and it's Shore West, which are 2 regional companies.
Okay. Yes, I don't know the regional. Of course, I know Keller Williams, but
yeah. So when I say that, people are like, oh, and I'll also say, like, I know most of the realtors of those 3 companies. Can you think of a person or a company that is like them, or whatever, right? And then we're cooking with some peanut oil.
So and I'm gonna kick that up even one more notch. I'm gonna tell you to sit across from that person. So like a virtual coffee, your first time sitting down with somebody ever. In my opinion, that meeting should last about 15 minutes. Because here's what should happen, right? You should sit across from that person and go, look, I looked you up on LinkedIn. You got a cool logo. I'm sure you got a cool company story, right? But here's the thing. I want to know specifically what industry sends you the most business, because I'm going to make you 3 to 5 introductions right now. Mm-hmm. What I'd hope is we could flip the script and I tell you who I'm looking for, and you can make 3 to 5 introductions for me. And dude, in 15 minutes, what I'll do is I'll say to somebody, okay, so you said Remax. Give me a second. Let me pull up LinkedIn.
Yep.
I'm like, stand by. Here we go.
Yep. Boom, boom, boom.
And then flip the script. And I'm going to say, look, I need to meet podcasters. I need to meet business coaches. I'm going to just go down the line of the specific things I need to meet. And it's quick in, quick out, because we're not asking for referrals. I'm not saying get me people who need to buy my freaking services. I'm saying get me to people who have my client base so we can figure out how to collaborate and work together and do some cool shit together. And it changes the philosophy of networking altogether. But people want to do these stupid ass get to know you meetings.
No,
hey, tell me about you. Let me tell you about me.
I go to networking events. My goal is always 3 to 5 actions or activities, and I never ask people how their fucking dog is because I quite frankly don't care. Right?
Well, mine's really simple. Right along the lines with it. Mine's simple. If I'm going to a networking event, it's set 2 appointments. I don't care if they're a virtual coffee or they're a freaking prospect meeting. 2 appointments. Then get the fuck out. Otherwise, it's a social club.
Yep. And that's the part I struggle with here in the Midwest, especially in Wisconsin. It is this, like, especially the BA5s, the business after 5 shit. It is this social thing, and it's like Midwest nice. Like, people feel obligated to be there, or it is truly their social life. I got my own damn friends, and I don't drink, so I don't. What are we doing here? Yep. And often the people that have the most time, to your point, like you said, they're broke. The people that have the most time, when I look at the people I emulate or I want to emulate, they're not in that fucking room.
Yep.
So it's like, find the right people and go from there.
Yeah. Here's a cool way and I usually get people's eyeballs go about this big when I tell them this, but it makes sense. It's really simple. CEOs go to breakfast, management goes to lunch, salespeople go to after hours, right?
You're not wrong.
So if you're looking at the rooms you're sitting in, odds are if you're sitting at a bar, you're sitting around a bunch of other broke people that are hoping that you will buy something off of them because they don't know how to go get business any other way.
Yeah. And it's their last ditch effort of the day.
Yes. So they can feel good that they did something. Well, I went and networked, so my business development activity is done for the day, even though I shuffled business cards from one side of my desk to the other all day long.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm a lunch guy because I'm a non-breakfast individual. I don't even like me that early in the morning, so I couldn't expect other people to like me.
Don't even like me that early.
But you're right though. It's like most CEOs aren't. Business development isn't their top priority. They want to cast a vision and the culture and run the business. So it's like they're gonna get it in and get it out early in the day. They're early risers, right? Which I'm a sleeper inner. We have a standing meeting at 7 a.m. every day, and that's a struggle some days for me to get to. It's a priority, so I make it.
Yeah,
it's just.
I don't think you have to be an early riser. I don't buy into the miracle morning bullshit and all that stuff. No. I do buy into routines. I think you need to have set routines for yourself. I just don't give a shit what your routines are. But your morning is also somebody else's morning. Yep. You just got to find the room that has the right people in it for your morning. Because they're there. And what people don't do, like for me, I got a really, really simple rule. If I walk into the room and there's an MLMer, I'm walking right the fuck out because that tells me the caliber of the room. Right? It's really,
oh yeah. What?
dude,
How
I'm
do you
gonna
feel
get so
about
much hate for that one.
No, you're not wrong. So MLM is multi-level marketing.
Marketing, yeah, network
Yeah,
marketing.
it's beach body, whatever crap.
Mary Kay.
Or okay, so okay, that was the one I was going to bring up. Do you consider Mary Kay? Is Mary Kay MLM?
It is. It falls under
Okay.
MLM. But here's the one caveat I will give about Mary Kay. Mary Kay teaches more business to those pink ladies
Yeah.
than any other company. They spend more time training those ladies. It's
Yeah.
still, and my problem with MLMs is the whole downline concept,
Yeah.
right? It really just comes down to you're literally just trying to sell to a whole bunch of broke people that they can be millionaires tomorrow. But
Yeah.
Mary Kay does do some training. I mean, Legal Shield is 100% MLM, and I know some of the most amazing people in the world that do Legal Shield. There's some really good folks, but at the end of the day, their job is to sell the room. And if you got people, their job is to sell the room, I don't want to network with that room.
No, that's where I've struggled when people are like, I'm a small business owner. It's like, well, what? Oh, it's Amway. Well, that doesn't fucking count.
Right.
Like that's like the ultimate MLM. And when people say it's not a pyramid scheme, like that's the first indication that it is a pyramid scheme.
Yes.
And I got involved in a couple MLMs earlier in my career, and I'm
we
like,
all have.
yeah, because you're like, oh, I could do this, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do. Like, what it came down for me was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this doesn't sound interesting. I don't want to spend my day doing this. Yeah, my mom did Market America years ago, which is now I think Shop, whatever. No, I that's a really good. I like that. If they let, yeah, no, it's a good starting point.
Yeah, because you want to be around people that understand the long game of business, because let's be honest, building a business is one of the toughest things on the fucking planet, because your business is going to work on you more than you will ever work on your business.
100%.
And I want to be around people that I don't have to worry they're going to have an angle behind their conversation, right? Like at the end of the day, they're just hoping that Donnie Boivin is the fucking guy that's going to come build their downline for him, right?
Yeah.
I want to be in rooms, one, with people who challenge the fuck out of me, two, that they're never always ahead of me. So my favorite rooms to be in are in the rooms when I'm running and gunning with other people, that when I walk in the room initially, I'm low man on the totem pole.
Yep.
Like, I'm like, fuck, this is a room, right? But I'm not going to stay low man long. I'm going to bust my ass to get ahead of them. But if I get ahead of them, I want them to turn around and kick up the fucking notch, and then they're past me, and I'm like, oh shit, right? Here we go.
Yeah.
Those are the rooms I want to be in, and that's really hard to find when you're talking about traditional networking.
Yeah, what I do dead on. So I walk into rooms with camel pants and a t-shirt. So I've been getting a look for 7 years, and there are plenty of rooms where I went into where I walked in feeling inadequate, being treated like I was inadequate, and within a couple months, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I graduated from this room because these people, right? It's like they're stuck in their ways. They're stuck in their mindset, right? Yeah, they're high and mighty in this room, and yet you put them in another room, and they couldn't hold a candle. It was like because they're cliquey or whatever in this room. And I've realized that when I've walked away from those types of relationships, people will call me like, why'd you stop coming? It's like, well, because I wasn't getting value and I wasn't giving value.
Yeah.
So I'm good. And I'll go somewhere else where I'm more valuable to the people in the room, and they provide more value to me. That's it.
For sure. The craziest thing happened to me was about 2 years into running my company, and I'm like, I'm gonna go back through some of my old networks and just see what everybody's doing. Two years after the fact, they were saying the same thing, having the same conversations, doing. I was like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah, right? They're waiting for fresh blood to come in to pitch to them. That's all they're doing.
That's it. And I just, being out here trying to do whatever you want to call an entrepreneur nowadays, freaking, and getting around people that are getting punched in the face every day because they're trying to level up themselves and their company, and they're just a different breed of people, and that's who I constantly want to surround myself with. So I enjoy finding guys like you, because I know that no matter what in the conversation, I'm going to learn something. Likely I'm going to teach you something, and it's going to be a cool back and forth, and there's always going to be a tinge of a pissing contest somewhere unintentionally.
100%.
It's fucking what stages did you get on? What rooms did you get into? And
Absolutely.
it's a fucking challenging, fun time.
Well, and that's the thing. A players want to be around A players.
Yep.
That's it. If you find yourself in a room with people that, when you hear the phrase like, it is what it is, or it's good enough, it's like, well, no, fuck that. I want to be around people where I'm like, fuck that guy, right? A little bit of jealousy is a good thing. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like you and I, like we have similar businesses. I put on networking events. You have, online groups and an in-person event, and it's like we're in a similar space. It's like, man, I want to learn from this guy. What is he doing that's working, and vice versa. And both being military, it's like we're willing to give answers, because that's one thing we're trying in the military. It's like the guy above you, it's his job to learn or to teach you, how to replace him, and his job to learn the next job, because it's the abundance mindset. Everybody in the military is replaceable. So there's an abundance of positions, and you will scale up in time with the right skill sets. And that's the challenge with the business world and the civilian world, for that matter. It's like people have this finite mindset. And like you said, those people that go to the same rooms telling the same jokes, they were there before you got there. They will be there well after you got there, because they're like, this is my room and this is my pitch. And they have this finite or scarce mindset. This is what I do. And I don't deviate from the script. And it's like, God, what a fucking boring life that must be.
No kidding.
I don't, that's not interesting to me. No part of it.
Absolutely. 100. What I am constantly trying to find is, what is my own skill gap? Who can give me that knowledge? Right? There's just people that have carved the trail for me. And I wish I could give credit to whoever told me this before, but I think it was Tony Watley. But he said, if you look at somebody that is doing something you wish you could do, and you're completely jealous of them, and you ever have the thought process of that should be me, you are coming from such a broke fucking mindset that you'll never get there. You have to flip the script and literally go, dude, how fucking awesome that dude busted his ass, or that gal busted their ass to freaking get there. Now hold my beer and watch this shit, right?
I still get that feeling from time to time when I'm the woe is me shit on LinkedIn. I'll see someone like, how that motherfucker get that stage? What? Why is he hanging out with?
We all do it.
Right? And it's like, and then I look back and I'm like, well, hold on, Andy. What did you do today to get there? Oh, nothing? Shut the fuck up.
Yep.
Right? It's like, bet. You know what I mean? Like I'm actually, that was a couple of years ago. About 5 years ago, I was going to networking events for a couple of years. And then I started going to those like more next level, where it was more educational ones. Remember this guy I saw, Derek Depry, and I was at a young professionals event. There's like 40 people in the room. And I'm looking around, and I'm like everyone's like 27 and under, and they all work for a company. And I'm like 35, because it was, under 40s. And I was like, I'm the oldest one here. And I was the only business owner. Anyways, Derek Depry was up there, and he did this like 45-minute presentation, and he gave everybody a copy of his book called Shift. And I was like, man, that is success. I want to be like that guy someday. I was so excited. I sat down and talked to him, and there was another guy, Brian Dennis, same thing. I was like, man, and both those guys, I sat down and had coffee, and I was like, how did you do this? They're like, I wrote a book and a speech, and then people bring me in. I was like, that is awesome. Right? Like, in my head, I'm like, that's the greatest job ever. I remember being in high school, and we had a motivational speaker that came in one time. I was like, I can't believe that's somebody's job. Like, where's that job, right? So I had this like initial awe and wonder, and then I started doing it. And then in 2019, I did a TEDx, and then all of a sudden, it became a job. I started getting, wanting to get gigs, and a couple of them got canceled because of COVID. And then it became work, and all the love and fun went away. And that's what I had to realize was, when it's no longer fun and exciting, I don't love it, it becomes work. That's when I have to evaluate, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for the opportunity to influence? And then I had to check myself on the door. And even to this day, there are days I get on LinkedIn and I'm like, these motherfuckers, right? And then I have to be like, Andy, that's too much LinkedIn for you today, because you didn't put the work in yesterday to have that opportunity today. Get the fuck over yourself. What are you going to do today? And that's got to be that pain to motivate me.
100%. And for me, it's even worse when you know the person and you're like, oh yeah, that person's a fucking moron.
Oh my God.
But I have to do the same thing. I have to tell myself, I'm like, but they're putting in the fucking work. They're doing the fucking time. So no wonder they're doing better than I am. So that's the whole respect the game, fucking saw an interview with a guy who was going against Kobe Bryant.
Oh,
And
it's funny. As soon as I was thinking Kobe, as soon as you said, respect the game, I'm like,
oh,
that
dude.
motherfucker. Yeah.
Well, this guy, they had recruited him for the team to do nothing but go up against Kobe. That was the only reason he came in.
Yeah.
And so he's like, the night that they were doing a matchup, he's like, I'm getting to the gym freaking early for a 7 o'clock game. So he
Yep.
gets to the gym at like 9 o'clock in the morning. When he gets there, Kobe's already there working out. And this dude does his fucking hard routine, like sweating, dying, everything else. And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he's taking a break. And there's Kobe still doing his workout. And he goes, I sat there and I watched Kobe, and that motherfucker was still working out like he was in a game going at it. That night, Kobe put up 80 points on me, and I was fucking just like I wasn't even there. And afterwards, I walked up to Kobe after the game was over, and I said, Kobe, why were you there so early, and why were you working out so hard? He goes, because you showed up. And I went, fuck me. That's that level of intensity that I wish I had on a more regular basis, because I don't always have it. Some days I got it. Some days I'll
What?
play the victim mindset. But man, to have that Mamba mindset is insane.
Yeah. I never liked Kobe as a player.
No.
I've never liked the Lakers. I just whatever. And then after he retired, and all these stories, because I don't recall these stories coming out when he
No.
was a player. And then these stories started coming out. I'm like, this motherfucker. And then since he passed away, it was like, oh shit, like they all come out. But it's that Mamba mindset. It's like, I can always outwork you. He
Yeah.
was obsessed with it. Well, there's stories about him when he was on the Dream Team, and he's like, all the other guys are partying. And he's like, no, I'm going to the gym, and I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym. That's all he did. And then within a week, like everybody was like, yeah, we're not partying. We're going to the gym. And it's like, he didn't ask him. He didn't tell him. He did. And if you want to, if you want to be a winner, you're going to figure out those people, right? Even now, like this still does bother me when I go on to networking events and I see someone on a stage where I'm like, they weren't that good. It's like, you know what? They put the reps in.
Yep. That's it.
Right. And then, so then it's motivation. It's like, well, I know I can do a better job on stage. However, they did a better job networking, getting there. And the first thing I do, I go up to him or her, I'd be like, hey, how'd you get on this stage? 100%. Right. And most people give it the answer. Oh, I do this, I do this, I do this. Like you, it's like, hey, you got to do 100 reach outs in LinkedIn to get 6.5 new clients every week. Yep. Okay. Now, am I willing to do the 100 reach outs? And if I'm not, next time I see somebody on stage, I already know the answer to the question. How do I get up there? Well, did I or didn't I do it? And I got to be at peace with either I put the work in and I made it, or I didn't put the work in and they did. Celebrate them because they put the work in and you didn't. You chose to watch another fucking 15 minutes of YouTube. You chose to, right? Like I play volleyball. I do some things that are healthy for me, right? Okay, that's what I chose. I chose volleyball or going to the gym or whatever else over putting the work in on LinkedIn that day. And I got to be at peace with that because my goal is not to be them. My goal is to live the life I want. And so long as I'm living in those parameters, that's the key. And that's, with respect to the nature of this podcast, that's one of the challenges that veterans have is like for 20 years, they're told what to do, what to wear, where to be. And all of a sudden they have the opportunity to make that decision. And then they want to, well, this person has that, so I'm going to follow that for a little bit. This person has that. No, you have the opportunity to say, this is what I want out of life. And then you have the obligation to figure out how to get it.
Yeah, I agree that I think my biggest struggle 20 years after the Marine Corps was I never actually went to look to figure out who I was. I just took what was ever in front of me, right? I took every job I took because it was offered to me. I never once sat back and thought, man, what do I really want out of life? Who do I really want to become? But I kept thinking that there was something bigger, right? There was something better out there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I turned 40 and realized I could start my own business and finally got the balls to actually pull the trigger and jump out and launch a company that I went on the wildest ride of my life. And I tell you, the number one way to know that you're living a life that you want to be living is if you can look the dude in the mirror and say, I'm proud of you, and fucking mean it. Because what most people can't do is they can't fucking look back and look dead in the eyes of the person who can stare back at them in the mirror because they've never met them. Building a business is the greatest tool on the fucking planet to figure out the fuck you're made of. Because when you work for other people, excuses are real, right? You can use them everywhere. If the sales are down, you can say the economy sucks, marketing sucks, lead sucks, and they're all real. They're excuses, but they're real. When you own that company, sales suck, go sell more. Marketing
Yeah.
sucks, go fix marketing. Clients are pissed, go put out the fire, right? That is on you. And the only people who find success in this world are us motherfuckers who were too dumb to quit. When everybody else would throw in the towel, we kept putting one more step forward. And that's how a lot of us get to where we're trying to go and the levels we're currently at.
You know, in business ownership, and this is one thing people don't quite understand all the time. It's not your fault, and it's your responsibility. And when you start having that mindset, you realize, okay, I chose to stand this business up. I chose to bring on these employees or risk my financial health. It's now my responsibility to give this thing a go, and an honest effort.
I like that phrasing, responsibility, because anytime something breaks in a company, my first move is, sorry guys, that's my fault, right?
Yeah.
And I don't give a shit what broke anywhere, because ultimately
Yeah.
I either hired that person, whatever,
Yeah.
that it's on me, and it drives them nuts. But what I found by me saying the words, it's my fault, I don't fall in the victim mind trap of, oh fuck, why does this always happen? Or how the fuck did we do this? Anything like this. When I say it's my fault, I automatically switch on the solution brain and go, all right, cool. What do we learn from this? What do we fix from this? How do we get this moving forward? Versus allowing myself to get suck down that victim mindset and fucking it all up.
No, I love it. No, it's that, how do we get out of the kill zone, and how do we prevent it in the future?
Yep.
And often in that kill zone, that's where the best innovation happens, because you didn't even know you had a problem until you're laying there, looking up at the sky saying, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
All right. Let's put a bow on this thing real quick. Plug your event in October. We touched about it. Plug your things. Just plug the things. Tell the people, right? This is simple, right? This is give the people, or I'll give you, right, the opportunity on this platform to tell people what you got going on.
Well, let me do this first. So, guys, if you're still hanging out with us and you got any nuggets, tips, tricks, anything out of this, do Andy a huge thing and share this episode or any of his other episodes out with one person who needs to hear this message. Let me tell you, having my own podcast, trying to build an audience is one of the toughest things in the freaking world. So by literally you sharing this episode or any other episode, it's literally like you walked up and gave him a virtual hug, and it'll mean the fucking world to him. So share this out one person.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely, brother. The biggest thing that we're doing is come September 20th through the 23rd in Fort Worth, Texas, is we have the Badass Business Summit. We will have 150 CEOs and small business owners there that are all focused on working and growing their business. Most of the attendees are the corporate escapees. So they're people like me that worked in corporate America in a space for a long time, jumped out, and are now trying to build to business freedom. They're not trying to recreate the life they have. They're trying to create a business around the lifestyle they actually want to live. Our speaker lineup is insane. Jared Morgan will be there. He did a $500 million exit 2 years ago and is going to teach how he scaled his business. Michael Haynes is flying in from Australia to teach business processes. Zach Knight will be there talking about tactical business decisions. We'll have a CEO panel that Jared Morgan will be freaking moderating. We're doing a live Q&A podcast where you can grill Kevin and I, ask us all the questions. Masterminds all during the day. So this whole summit is designed for you to work on your business while you're at the summit. So you're not going to come there and take a whole shit ton of notes and then go home and forget about what you wrote down and never open up your notepad. You work on your business while you're there. So it's the biggest thing. Just go to badassbusinesssummit.com to check that out. We have successchampionnetworking.com, soon to be successchampion.net, but successchampionnetworking.com to find out about the peer groups, and just follow me, Donnie Boivin, wherever you're on social media. Podcast name is Growth Mode, but go support Andy and put this fucking show out for him. And that, by the way, folks, is the give, take.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
No, I'm going to pick up on that. Top takeaway from day.
So the biggest thing is when you sit across from somebody that is going through similar things, there's always a refresher of, man, they're going through it too, right? They're having the same mindset issues, the same abundance, some lack issues, and the victim mindset before it. So the biggest takeaway for me today is you got to constantly surround yourself with people that are freaking pushing you. And you got to check the rooms you're in, because I'm sure there's some places that I'm currently hanging out in that I need to level up because they're not giving me the ROI, and ROI is not always financial, right? Yep. So if the rooms aren't paying ROI, then I need to check those 6.
No, I like that. I wrote this down. I wrote down the two things: do the damn work until the damn work is done. Love it. So that's a good quote. May end up in my next book. And I'm going to take away this ADD: action, document, delegate. I do a form of it that's piss poor, and this is a much simpler process, repeatable, systematic, and thorough, that'll get us there, because often it's the I know how to do it, why don't you? Right kind of victim mindset or
Yep.
statement. And so now here's a process we can put in place within our organization to ensure that, now there's three levels of people that understand the expectation, the process, and how to then do it. Right? There's that part. So nope, I wrote those two things down. And again, if you can get 2-3 nuggets of everything you do each day and implement it in your business, think about the thousands of things that you're going to evolve and do and scale within your business or within your life. This episode, or this podcast, is geared towards the individual. And one of the challenges with that time in your life when you're transforming from troops and boots to veterans of the civilian world, it feels like you have to do everything all at once, when in reality, it's 2 or 3 new things a day. And that's probably a lot. And that is what's going to change and improve your fighting position. Continually improve your fighting position. Surround yourself with the best people, and you will be able to determine and manifest the life you want. If you haven't heard it lately, welcome home.